Okay, welcome back for another episode of Bitcoin School. On this video today, we're going to cover the difference between Bitcoin and crypto, or Bitcoin versus the altcoins, or otherwise known as shitcoins. So we're going to touch on again, and like in the previous video, how Bitcoin is money. You can find that on the channel here, but we're going to sort of recap a little bit about that. We're going to, of course, have to talk about altcoins, aka shitcoins, and how they're just competing with each other. They're not really competing with Bitcoin. There's an unlimited supply of shitcoins. Anyone can make one. You can make one easily and cheaply, which is why there's so many of them. And that number just grows by the day. Network effect, and how that is why Bitcoin has won through the power of network effects. And Bitcoin is hard to change versus shitcoins easy to change. So if you want to stick around for that and learn the difference between Bitcoin and crypto, then roll the intro.
Crypto world, it ain't no charade. Navigating blocks like a digital arcade. Peer to peer is how we roll. Code it up, we in control. Crypto wallet makes us whole. Stacked in satoshis, that's the goal. Bitcoin school, we staying cool.
So I like this graph. This has been around online for a while, and there's different versions of this. But basically, when you first get into crypto, you think crypto is this big ecosystem, and Bitcoin is just a sort of part of that. Whereas in the reality of, and once you learn and study Bitcoin more, you'll find that actually Bitcoin is its own thing. Sure, Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency, but it's not comparable. It's not in the same world as all these other tens of thousands of coins. So I love this infographic. This is Bitcoin over time. Sure, this is not, it's not a super accurate graph. There are ups and then big downs and then big ups and then big downs. But this is just trying to show the general trend over the last 16 years of Bitcoin as it just goes up. Sure, month to month, week to week, or even year to year can be down. But I think something like over 4 to 5 years, if you hold Bitcoin over 45 years, then like from any point in time, if you choose any point in time and go 4 to 5 years into the future, it's always up. Whereas shitcoins look like this, they start with a value of 0. And then if they just happen to, get hyped up, or the right influencer talk about them, or they just happen to, be launched in the middle of a Bitcoin bull run, and some people take a little bit of Bitcoin and they gamble it in some shitcoin. There's a big run up, massive profits can be made, but most people don't, and then it just crashes back to nothing. So it's just important to keep this in mind. Bitcoin is savings that's going to increase in value over time, and shitcoins is just gambling. Gambling's okay, but as long as you realize that you're gambling, right?
In Bitcoin.
So this is a great clip from Saifedean, and he really describes the difference between Bitcoin and shitcoins here. So I just want to play this, and then we'll discuss a little bit.
And some of the most influential people in Bitcoin have spent the last 7-8 years, going insane, trying to change some of the very small metrics of Bitcoin and completely failing at it. And this is what makes Bitcoin different. Bitcoin, in terms of...
So what he's talking about here is, people often say that, Bitcoin isn't able to be changed and it's immutable, but it's not really the case. It's just very hard to change, and it has this network effect that we'll talk about later. But the larger the network effect, the more nodes in the system, in the Bitcoin network, the more individual nodes, which are usually attached to individual people or groups of people, is that if there's a proposal to change Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is just computer code, so of course you can change computer code if you want to, but all of the different nodes inside the Bitcoin ecosystem, and anyone can run a node. You can buy you can invest a couple $100 and have the software and the hardware to run a Bitcoin node. And the more nodes there are in the system, the harder it is to change, because basically when there's a proposal, it's called a BIP, a BIP, a Bitcoin improvement proposal. Anyone can make a Bitcoin improvement proposal, and there's been many that have been proposed and acted upon. but they basically get voted on. So Bitcoin's very democratic, and all the nodes get to vote about the new proposal. And that's how Bitcoin makes slight changes. There's been different versions of Bitcoin addresses and different sort of, it's a whole nother video, but basically some, tiny adjustments have been made to Bitcoin over time, but it's very hard to make those adjustments because there is no central authority that can approve those proposals or adjustments. It's the Bitcoin network has to approve it, and there's tens of thousands of Bitcoin nodes, and they all get an equal vote onto these Bitcoin improvement protocols. So Bitcoin is changeable, but it's very hard to change it.
The person who founded it, all of this perfect storm of somebody founding it, putting the software out there and then disappearing, and the software growing up on its own. I think a good example of it is to think of it as this, like a child that we threw in the jungle. Most likely, if you throw a 1-year-old in the jungle, he'll die. But if he survives, you're gonna have a massive monster. He's gonna be very powerful, and he's not gonna be able to stop. Now, you can't just bring another kid his age, who's now 20 years on, who's lived in a city, and then tell him, go spend a couple of weeks in the jungle and then go fight this guy. It doesn't work that way, right? And all these other coins are exactly like that. All these other coins, it's completely trivial for all the ones that I've ever heard of or researched. There's more than 1,000 of them, and I highly urge you to never waste any time on any of them. But, for those of you who had the misfortune of wasting time.
So this is an old video because he said, there's almost 1,000 shitcoins. There's tens of thousands of them now. So they multiply. And his point is that every other shitcoin out there, even Ethereum, which is, second to Bitcoin in terms of market cap, they, just like Bitcoin, can make changes to the protocol. But unlike Bitcoin, there is just a small group of Ethereum founders, the guy Vitalik that created it, and they can basically just get in a room and decide. And the Ethereum network doesn't get a vote. If you hold Ethereum and stake Ethereum, you don't get a say. They can just change the protocol at will. They can print more tokens, or they can, change, some of the properties of the code or whatever, and they can change it very easily. And that is the same for all the other thousands of shitcoins. It's just some guys made it, and if they want to change something about it and issue themselves, 1 million more tokens, then they can do that very easily and effortlessly. So this is the point is trying to make between Bitcoin and shitcoins. It's very hard to change Bitcoin, very easy to change any of the other coins out there.
On these coins, it's completely trivial to identify 2 or 3 people or 1 person for each one of those coins who could literally change whatever they want in that coin within a week. So for instance, Ethereum, there's an Ethereum Foundation, and it's completely trivial for them to change anything in Ethereum, as has been demonstrated over and over and over with all the hard forks that they've done. Ripple is just a centralized, stupid game. There's a bunch of people running it with their own token. They can do whatever they want with it. They've printed 100 billion, and they have 60 billion on the side that they can do whatever they want with. So, I could keep going on and on. Name any particular coin.
What about Bitcoin Cash?
Exactly, Bitcoin Cash, another excellent example. I mean, the people who started it were people who started it by changing the Bitcoin software. So they started it from the perspective of saying, hey, this isn't something that is sacred. This isn't something that is immutable. We can change it. So if you can change it to make the block size larger, it'll be trivial to change it to.
He talks about Bitcoin Cash there, and there's also another one called Bitcoin SV. And those were forks of Bitcoin. So those were people that were involved in Bitcoin in the early days, and they took the Bitcoin code, which anybody can. The Bitcoin code is open source. You can copy and paste it, and you can make your own exact duplicate of Bitcoin, or you can make some little changes like the Bitcoin Cash guys and Bitcoin SV guys did, and they have failed miserably. And there's a reason why. I mean, even if you just kept the Bitcoin code, you just made a copy of it and kept it exactly the same, there's a reason why the exact copy of Bitcoin is not going to be as successful as the original Bitcoin, and that's due to network effects, which we'll talk about later. But yeah, I just think this clip from Saifedean is just a good explanation of the giganticness of Bitcoin and how it's just this big sort of hard to move mass, digital rock It takes a lot of agreement to make the tiniest change, whereas all these shitcoins, including Ethereum, can be changed on the whim of a founder or a coder. Okay, so this is just a graph of, you can see here, days since launch. So these are all these squiggles, different shitcoins or altcoins. Actually, the top 118. I think this was from like 2018 or 19. And you can see they usually launch and they have a big pump, and all of them kind of follow this path of pumping. And then after 1,000-ish days of launching, they almost at zero. Whereas you have Bitcoin in the red here, and you can see Bitcoin still, it had its big pump and its big dump, and it has these ups and downs. But the ups are always higher than the downs, and eventually, just like the infographic I showed you at the start, Bitcoin over time just goes up. Altcoins over time just go down. A video around the network effect, and this is why Bitcoin has won. This is what gives Bitcoin its power. So we'll play it, and then we'll discuss a little bit.
Money is simply a belief held by a lot of people, a collective trance. Always in the past, belief in a currency formed around a hierarchical network topped by a king or a queen and his or her armies, a pharaoh, an emperor, a czar, a president. And prior to the U.S. Civil War, there were hundreds of regional currencies operating in the U.S., each centered around one strongman or another with his hierarchy under it. For the hierarchical pack animal that we are, hierarchy with an alpha king on top is understandable by all the people in the network, and thus it's stable. That's why when the king issues a currency and tells people to use it, people believe in it. This strongman-backed fiat currency approach has worked for 6,000 years or more, but with Bitcoin, it's different. Instead of a king or central authority creating the belief and then controlling the currency, Bitcoin doesn't have a hierarchical network structure with a strong man at the top. It's a decentralized network structure. The fact is, the majority of the world is still skeptical of Bitcoin, and this is why.
The asset itself is creating nothing.
Watch out. You all can do whatever you want, and I don't care. Okay?
People aren't used to having currencies backed by a decentralized network. There isn't a hierarchy with a believable person on top to define what they should believe in. It's not the same pattern. To create the belief network effects necessary for the existence of money, hierarchical networks use power from the top, while decentralized networks use ubiquity. Crypto changes the nature of money in a historical way, because unlike gold or paper money, crypto is a native creature of the new global network. Unlike fiat currencies, it isn't constrained by geography or by time. This is a huge difference. Bitcoin's product is a currency, and more specifically, a store of value. Its currency doubles as, let's say, shares, and we can all buy and sell the coins as we would traditional stock. And in this view, Bitcoin's market cap would put it in the top few most valuable companies in the world, like other network effect businesses. So Bitcoin has core defensibilities. And of course, there are only 4 defensibilities native to the digital age that Bitcoin might use. There's network effects, there's brand, there's scale, and there's embedding. Network effects are, of course, the greatest of these. So let's focus on the network effects map. You can see the various network effects types and categories, organized by color, with the strongest network effects at the center of the map. Bitcoin's first and primary network effect is a belief network effect. It's the same mechanism you see with gold and with religions. The more people believe it's valuable, the more valuable it gets for everyone. The more times its price crashes and then bounces back, the more people will believe it has lasting value.
So I linked this video because it's a much longer documentary than the clip I'm playing. But yeah, there's multiple facets to a network effect. But you can simply understand it as to why Facebook is still so profitable, so widely used, and has lasted so long. It's because it was one of the first social media networks to kind of get a network effect. And you can imagine you could quite easily, especially with AI these days, you could code. You could get AI to make a copy of Facebook. You could have the same functionality. You could have the website look exactly the same. You could make almost direct copy of it, but nobody would use it because the value of Facebook, whether I'm not trying to argue I like Facebook or anything, but the value of Facebook is the number of people using it. And if you made your own Facebook copy, cool, you've got a website that looks the same, you've got, a UI and a UX that looks the same and feels the same, but there's no one on it. If there's no one on it, it has no use. It's just you've just got an empty website with no connections. Facebook's value is the global network, the people that are on it, and also your little network. And that's why it's so hard if you've ever gotten into like a new messaging app, like a lot of people use WhatsApp, whereas I like to use Signal. But it's really hard to get people to leave WhatsApp and just use Signal, because there's more people on WhatsApp and they're already on WhatsApp and they've got to have a reason to come and use Signal, and you have to make the argument as to why it's better, and then they have to download another app, and then they have to enable notifications, and it's very hard. Technology companies that make apps, their number one thing is how do you get people to migrate from one network to another, and that's the challenge. And Bitcoin's network is so vast and large now that a lot of people agree that it's reached escape velocity. It's too big, it's too much of a behemoth, so many miners, so many nodes, so many users, and it's just exponentially increasing, and it's not going anywhere. Okay. So is Ethereum a shitcoin? Short answer is yes. Bitcoin is proof of work. Ethereum used to be proof of work, now it's proof of stake. There'll be another video on this channel some other time explaining the difference between those two. This video is going to be long enough without getting into that. Like I said before, Bitcoin is hard to change versus Ethereum very easy to change. And Bitcoin has a finite supply, 21 million coins, and actually a lot less if you account for lost coins. But Ethereum supplies whatever the Ethereum Foundation decides it is. It's spent a few years marketing itself as ultrasound money because it was deflationary. But then over this last year, from 2023 to 2024, it's been inflationary because it's been a bear market and they just decided to print more. So, they can just change it at a whim.
Oh, well.
Anyone who believes proof of stake can work is either one, completely clueless at how and why Bitcoin works at all, or two, a con artist using it as a buzzword to promote a worthless scam like Ethereum. Do you still believe that Ethereum is a scam and in general proof of stake? You're either clueless if you think it's interesting.
Yeah, no, I still stand by that. I think
Would you classify Ethereum as a shitcoin?
For sure. It's the mother asshole from which the shitcoins spring.
The king shitcoin? Right.
Yeah. I think the key thing is, the way to think about it, there's another tweet from a couple of years ago, which is essentially proof of work was like the invention of flight. Like we've gotten this machine and we managed to get it to fly off the ground. And proof of stake is, hey, we found a great way to make airplanes cheaper and faster by not making them fly. By keeping them on the ground. Like the invention of proof of work, the reason the entire digital currency space exists is because Bitcoin operates based on proof of work. If Bitcoin was based on proof of stake, it would have died or been shut down from day one.
But that's a hypothesis, and a lot of people believe that, and I think they have a lot of strong support. But basically, proof of work is grounded in physics. In the real world, the proof of stake is more about...
It's politics. It's the Federal Reserve. It's exactly what we have. It's just a group of people who get to decide the rules. And it's essentially a system that is, it's a security. It's a company. So it's not an innovation in any sense. It's a step backward to what we already had, which is you get a bunch of people in charge of the money. Now, the only reason it survives in this, and the reason I call these things a scam, and I have no problem with calling them a scam, is because they fraudulently present themselves as being decentralized. They present themselves as just being a different way of doing decentralization than Bitcoin. When it's not. It's just they're riding Bitcoin's coattails, and they're riding the fact that most people don't quite understand what Bitcoin is and how it works to portray themselves as a cheaper, better, more efficient way of doing what Bitcoin does. It's not. It's a less legally accountable way of doing what central banks do.
Right. So, and the basic criticism is that there's a group of people, sometimes a very small group of people, that can control the parameters of the operation of the system. So
Exactly.
Over time, you can't trust it's not gold under the mattress. It doesn't have
Yes.
that kind of hardness.
It's not property, and I really very strongly recommend your discussion with Sailor for people who want to elaborate more on this. There's a bunch of people in charge, which means that, legally they should be doing this under securities law. But even as an anarchist, if I don't want to care about that, the technical implication of it is this is never going to be adopted as a neutral way of transferring value on the internet, because you need something that enemies can trade with one another. You can't have something that has a small group of people in charge, because A, the small group of people themselves can be corrupted, and B, they can be coerced. You can put a bunch of people in a room, put a gun to their head, and you can change everything in any of these digital currencies. And that's why I think, you'll.
This is the beauty and safety of Bitcoin, is that, and this is why many people speculate Satoshi was so adamant to stay anonymous, and that it's probably a group of people that are trying to stay anonymous. There is no way for any government anywhere to put a gun to anybody's head and make them change something on the Bitcoin network. It's just impossible, because it's completely decentralized. You would have to turn off the internet. You would have to go and find 51% of the nodes which are distributed around the globe, and a lot of them, their locations are not even known, which is not the case for all the shitcoins.
Find a lot more sympathy among fiaters to shitcoins. The Keynesian economist to Ethereum fanboy pipeline is a very strong one because it's the same thing. It's like you like the idea of people being in charge and money, and you think you're going to be the one who's going to be in charge of money. So you see a lot of this phenomena, and you see the same people that want gold and don't like central banking, they get into Bitcoin.
Yeah, so just to actually.
So that's a good point, right? As he says, like, you can't have someone in charge of money, and that's the problem we've had with money over centuries, over millennia, is there's always been someone in charge, whether it was a central bank or a king that was clipping coins, or devaluing and melting down the coins and putting in cheaper metals, or what, and now we do it digitally with the proliferation of central banks just digitally typing zeros in their computers and making more money. If it's widely believed and said that money is the root of all evil, and if you put one person or a group of people in charge of money, they will, even if they start with good intentions, they will, without a doubt, eventually become corrupted by the power and the greed, right? It's human nature. So you have to separate money from a person or a country or a group of people or a power. True money, real money, freedom money, global money can only be decentralized. And at the moment, Bitcoin is the most decentralized computer network ever, and it's still in its relative infancy. Okay, so conclusion: just study Bitcoin. This is the point of this channel, is to hopefully you learn a little bit about Bitcoin. Buy a small amount so you get skin in the game, and it forces you to learn. And a small amount is relative, whatever small amount for you might be $10, might be $100, might be $1,000, might be $10,000. Depends on your overall sort of financial situation. But buy enough that if you lost it through ignorance of how to store it, or that you wouldn't be too upset if you somehow made a mistake and you lost it, or you got compromised or whatever, but large enough that it would motivate you to learn a little bit more about it. So as this is something I've learned from other Bitcoiners, is that as most of these ideas, they're not my own, they're things I've learned and taken on from other people smarter than me. But something I've heard a lot that really rings true is, as your understanding increases, so can your investment. So the level of investment in Bitcoin should match your understanding of how it works, how to keep it secure, which is going to be in a coming video. But yeah, so I hope this has helped you understand the difference between Bitcoin and shitcoins. And yeah, go learn some more Bitcoin. As always, none of this, as per the disclaimer at the front of the video, none of this is financial advice. Do your own research. Don't buy Bitcoin just because I say buy Bitcoin. do whatever you want. Ask a financial advisor, ask other people, but at the end of the day, you are responsible for your own financial decisions, and I hope this educates you and helps you come to that decision on your own. Okay, cheers.
In the Bitcoin school, we learned to trade digital coins, man, we getting paid. Crypto world, it ain't no charade. Navigating blocks like a digital arcade. Peer-to-peer is how we roll. Code it up, we in control. Crypto wallet makes us whole. Stacked in Satoshis, that's the goal. Bitcoin school, we staying cool.